All right, we're back. We are GAME1014 in the summer 2017 semester at George Brown, and we are week 2, part 3 of our broadcast. We're talking about setting up CreateJS. We just finished a basic setup for our folder structure, but it's really basic and it doesn't do anything. Like literally it's just a web page that does 0. Here's the rest of the setup. That was like the initial, very, very simple setup. Okay, in order for you to have this ready, I'm going to start from this side. We've already got Visual Studio Code, theoretically. I want to install CreateJS. And the way to do this is a couple ways. I could go to download and then download each individual library and install it manually. But this is a real pain in the ass and it can be error prone. And the reason for this is because you're going to download it, unzip it, you're going to try and put it in the right place. It might be a mess and so on. And it's really inefficient, especially if you're doing this over and over again. You want to be able to use a package manager to fetch everything for you and put it in the right place. Okay, that's the idea. In order for us to do a package manager, there's 2 package managers we're going to use today. One, we're going to install Node.js. Now, Node.js is, back in the day, we didn't have Node on the back end. We had PHP, we had other back end services like ASP.NET and so on, right? We never used JavaScript on the back end. Nowadays, JavaScript is on the front end, in the middle, and on the back end. And when I say in the middle, like somewhere on a database, right? So we have JavaScript everywhere. It's the new craze, right? And the reason for this is because it's lightweight, it's quick, right? And it's event-driven. It's really cool. We're not going to do this with Node.js. It has a lot of capability. I'm just going to use the package manager associated with Node.js to grab another package manager that I got to use. The package manager that I'm going to use is npm, Node Package Manager. It comes with Node, so it means that you have to install Node, either version 6 or version 7. I don't care which one it is. You need to install Node. So this is one of those installations for home, for those people who are doing it at home. Okay? That's the first thing. If you're a Mac user, I do recommend Homebrew as a way of installing Mac Node on Mac. So I would say there's a Homebrew install Node.js Mac, right? And the reason why I look at this, sure, doesn't matter which one it is. If you look at the, actually, I'll go over here. There's some great resources online on how to do that, right? And the reason why we want to use Homebrew is because if you don't use Homebrew on a Mac, a lot of times you have to use sudo all the time, or sudo, however you want to say it, right? You have to do sudo all the time, and it's terrible. It adds a little bit of time whenever you use Node, right? So a great way to do that is to use Homebrew, and there's an installation process here. I'm just going to copy this link and put it into Slack for those people who need to do that if you're a Mac user. Mac user, Homebrew, Node install. That's what that is. So you can try and figure that out. If you're interested, that's how you do it. You can also download and install through nodejs.org. However, it won't be exactly perfect. On a PC, you don't have to worry about any of that. You just download one of these, you install them, and you have Node. Now, one of the challenges with the PC is this idea of environment variables. Sometimes you go on your command prompt, and you still, even when you install Git, you're going to get unrecognized command, right? And a lot of that is because the way Windows deals with their environment variables. So take a look at updating the environment variables for Windows, for Git, and Node. Okay, if you're going to look that up, that is definitely going to be a requirement for you if you're Windows users and you're going to install it for home. Okay. Next.
Would you recommend if you have access to both to use the Mac?
I recommend the Mac is easier.
Get into the habit of it.
The Mac is easier, get into the habit, but the even easiest thing is C9, right? It's got it all. Done. You're done. There's nothing for you to do, right? So Bower is what we're going to be using. Bower is the package manager for the web. So either one, Node Package Manager, NPM, or Bower. By the way, there's going to be a question on the exam for Bower. I'm going to say, hey, what is Bower? Bower is a package manager for the web, right? That's the answer. That's what's going to be the answer on this thing, right? Like literally, I'm telling you what's going to be on the exam. So remember this. Bower is a package manager for the web. I'm going to say that, right? And other things I'm going to maybe ask about Bower. All right, so cool. So I'm going to use these 2 package managers to grab stuff from CreateJS and install it in the right folder in your project. Okay, let me show you how to do that. Again, we're recording this so that you can see it. So right now, all we have is this game.js, but we have no functionality with game.js. We want to give us some libraries to skip ahead to give some more capability for this. So the way to do that is I'm going to, again, open up my terminal in the right position. By luck, it's already there. And what I want to do is after I've installed Node, I want to install Bower. And the way to do that is npm, so Node Package Manager. Now, to test, first of all, if you have Node, it's Node -v, right? I got Node 7.80. Things are moving so fast in the web, it's a 7.10, all right? And I only installed this a couple weeks ago. Like I'm telling you, it's really moving fast. By August, I think we're going to be at 8. It's insane. All right, anyways, the way it is once I know I have Node, I can do something like this. npm, which stands for Node Package Manager. That's the program that I'm calling upon. Some kind of verb. Install. That's the verb. That's the action I want to take. I want to install. Hey, I'm saying this. Hey, Node Package Manager, install something for me. Okay. What I want to be installed is Bower. Now the switch that I want to use is -G for global, and that's the command. Now, if you don't know this, or if you can't remember this, if you actually go back to the Bower site, it tells you that. It says, hey, if I want to download and install Bower, how do I do that? And if you scroll down a little bit, here it is. Right? So it's not like it's unknown or hidden anywhere. It's there, right? I'm going to press enter. What you're going to see is something like this. It's going to go out, grab the latest version of Bower, which is another package manager that I'm going to use, and install it locally on my command prompt, so I can use it from anywhere. Okay? Notice that my version for Bower is 1.80, so I can test that. Bower -v, 1.80. All right, now that I have Bower installed, I can install all my packages for CreateJS. And this is how it looks. The name of the program that I'm using, the command that I'm going to make, or the instruction, and then the package that I want. The first package, if you look at CreateJS, there's 4 of them. It's easel.js, right? So I can simply say easel.js, right? Now, before I go there, though, where this is going to be installed is an ugly position. By default, Bower installs it into a folder called Bower Components. It's really ugly. Wouldn't it be nice if I can put it inside scripts lib, like a library, inside the scripts folder? How do I set that up? Well, if I go back to VS Code, I can do this by creating a configuration file. So I'm going to right-click. I'm going to click New File. I'm going to click .bower.rc. Okay? And I'm going to use some braces. I'm going to say directory. Notice how it picks up that in VS Code and knows about Bower, right? And it's going to, instead of it going to Bower Components, I want to specify scripts lib, right? Just like that. Now I've got my little configuration file that tells it whenever I do any packages from Bower, I fetch any packages from Bower, they're going to land right inside scripts lib. Do I have a scripts lib folder? I have a scripts folder, I have a core folder, but I don't have a lib folder. Bower will create it for me. Okay, that's what it's going to do. Scripts, if I can, I know, T, I always, thank you. Scripts lib. And then, that's one part. And the other part is, before I do this, I need to do something of a Bower init, okay? The initialization will actually create a bower.json file, which is going to be a manifest of all my dependencies for this project. When I say dependencies, I mean all the libraries that I need to run the project. That's all it's going to list. It's going to list the dependencies. So here's how it looks. It's like a little wizard. And like I said earlier, it's not a guy with a hat and a wand. It's like literally a batch file that runs. That's what it is. So if I kind of enter, right? The only thing I want to change here is the name of my my file. So in my project is GAME1014 lowercase, S2017. That's all I'm changing. And then lesson, if I can spell, lesson 2B, I can't. And then just hit enter on everything else. Now what this does is it actually creates a little batch file. We're going to update this later on, right? A little JSON file, right? So if you notice, here's my bower.json. Here it is, right? Notice that it picked up my GitHub repository, right? And all it did was create a place, some kind of file where I can track all my dependencies for my project. We're going to talk about project dependencies in the future. but I'm just preparing you. Again, what we're doing, setting up. We're just setting up. That's all we're doing. We haven't done one piece of code yet, right? All right. 2. Once we got this, now we can go back here and do Bower install, right? Don't worry, this is all being recorded, guys, right? And then the name of my my library, easel.js, right? And then -- save. -- save means that it's going to track the dependency in my bower.json file. That's all it means. Okay. If you didn't put -- save, it would install it but not track it. That's all it does. I want to track everything, so I use -- save. On an exam, would I ask you this question? Probably not. Okay. It's not required, right? In fact, Bower, I just want you to know about Bower. I want you to know that tools exist like that. Could you go around? Could you exist without it? Yes. You can go grab the files yourself and do it. But why? Watch. If I press enter, it goes, finds the easel.js, and it's done. If I look at my folder structure, I don't have to install anything. It's right there. There's my library. And it's available to me. And if I go into my lib folder, these are all the JavaScript libraries for me. It just fetches it for me and put it inside the right place. But that would be really tedious if I do every single one line at a time. So I can do them all together, like this. So I can say the next one is tween.js. I just know this. So please, I don't expect you to remember. And then preload. If I do that, it grabs all of them together and puts them. Okay. Now this is really powerful, right? Because imagine I've had to download them all separately, unzip them, put them in the proper locations and all that stuff. I don't do any of that stuff right now. Look, it's all right here. Find our lib, bam, they're all there. Easel, I got preload, sound, and tween. Okay, they're there, but they're not connected to my index.html, which makes them absolutely useless at this point. Okay, I need to connect them to my index.html so I can access them. They're not connected, they're not accessible. I can't do anything with them. And that's just the general rule with your code. So if I go back to here and I want to make them accessible, I want to put them before my game.js file so they're accessible. I don't have to, but it's a good practice. So I'm going to type in, actually I just copy and paste this a bunch of times, and I'll just change the source, the stuff in the source. So copy, 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 copy. There's my 4 placeholders. And now what I want to do is I want to start with easel. And again, please don't do this. I'm going to put this up on GitHub in a second, right? So copy path, and then paste inside here. So paste. And the reason why I do this is because there's less chance for error, like my scripts error that I just had, right? No finger typing errors here, all right? And again, if the next one would be tween. Again, bear with me while I do this, but this is the process. All right, so I'm just building this up here. And okay, that's that. And then I'm going to do sound and then preload. Now, if you're following along, you can notice that there are different versions for each of the libraries. Some of them are at 0.8 something, and the other ones are at 0.6 something. Don't worry, even though they're point something, they've been established libraries for years, right? So I'm not giving you something that's like going to expire or that's not being worked on. There's active development on this stuff. They always add something. For example, some of this stuff went to WebGL lately. You can actually have a WebGL component to this. It's really kind of neat. All right, so now that I've got all my libraries in there pretty much, right? Notice I'm putting the dot in there. The dot means relative path. Take a look at the scripts folder, inside the lib folder, inside the easel.js folder, inside the lib folder, inside, and then get that easel.js dot whatever it is, right? By the way, what's the difference between min and the regular ones? Why is it min? What does that mean? Yeah. Compressed. And the reason why we compress it is because, first of all, it looks really ugly like this, right? That's really ugly. You even know what that is, right? The reason why we compress it is because there's a bunch of white space inside of our libraries, and we want to take that white space out to make it more efficient when it comes to browser loading, all right? We're going to eventually compress our files too, right? For now, they don't need to be compressed. Okay, cool. So now that we've got this is great. This means we've attached all of our scripts, and I can actually write some stuff with CreateJS, my CreateJS API now. So let's recap. We've used Bower as a package manager to go and grab the libraries, install them locally in my scripts lib folder, And now I'm going to access them inside of my game.js file. Yeah.
On the CreateJS website, under installations, it says just to include the script source, like why?
The CDN.
Sorry?
The CDN is what it's saying, right?
Yeah.
Yes, the CDN is also a great way of doing it. However, when you do local development, it's much nicer. So you have access to the scripts right here, and we're going to need to use them later on. But if you're in production, that's when I would go and use a CDN. A CDN stands for a Content Delivery Network. And what it is they've shared their files on the cloud. So you don't have to do this installation, right? When you're not in when you're not in development. If I'm in production, I can just access a CDN, a link on the cloud, and it'll just download the script for me. Okay? And it's actually more efficient in the long run than doing it this way. But we need access locally, and especially if you don't have access to the internet or something like that, you want to work remotely, you can do that without having that link. Okay? But good observation.
Limit, like not having it locally, does that limit, like, can you not do some things that you can?
Yeah, you can't do anything. I mean, without having the library access, that seems like I don't have access to all the files that I need, right? But it's okay. If it's in production, it's probably going to be, it's never going to, if you're worried about it going, the CDN going down, never. It's usually hosted on Google or Microsoft or Amazon. It's not going to go down. If Google goes down, something's gone dark, right? It's not going to happen. So don't worry, right? But for our implementation, I want to show you how to do this stuff so you understand how to do this, okay, from a production perspective, right? Okay, so we've got all this stuff happening. I want to access my game.js file, and I need to set it up. So here's what I'm going to do before I put this up on GitHub, all right? I want to set up a structure. So here's my initial structure. Let's see if you see some similarities here. So function, this is my game.js file, start. What does this look like? And then function update. What does that look like to you? Anything you've ever used before? How about Unity, right? I'm making it this way for you guys, right? So you understand. I can name this anything I like, right? But those are the two functions I want to use. And the last one I want is a function that's called main. Notice that I'm using capitals for the functions, all right, for now. Also, what I want to say is something like this. When the window finishes loading, I want to start the start function. So I can do something like this, window.onload, and then equals to start. Okay? So what this is saying is, write an event listener. When the event triggers, go to the start function as a handler for this onload event. So point to the start function, this is the pointer, make a reference to the start function, and that's the one that we're going to use for the callback function or the handler. All right, that's what's going to happen. All right, if that's true, if this works, then what I want to do is I want to say something like this. I want to do a console log, right, which is kind of like a debug, and I want to say something like game started, just to test that this whole thing works. Okay. Now this has nothing to do with CreateJS. This is just me making sure that my game.js is connected to my index.html, and I can see some connectivity. Okay. This is cool. Next, I want to be able to have a browser, some kind of link to my browser when every time I update something on my editor, my browser automatically updates. And I'm going to use another little package that I'm going to grab with NPM now to do that. So back to the terminal. Again, this is another tool. We're tool heavy today. I'm going to go npm install. Again, I'm going to fetch me something from npm. I'm going to download and install something called light-server, and then -g. So what's light server? Light server is a small server that basically gets installed in your command line so that I can simulate what it's like to be on a real server online, right? Number one. Second thing, and why do I need that? Because sometimes when you have visuals, images, assets, sound, and so on, it doesn't work by just double-clicking on your file. It just won't work. You need to run it on a server a lot of times, right? So I'm simulating that here so I don't have to do that later, okay? -g means global, so I'm installing this light server globally on my machine, okay? I'm just testing it around. This is my test to make sure this all works. And then I'm going to put it up on GitHub. All right, so it downloads light server and installs it, right? And now in my project folder, I'm just going to call light-server and then press enter. And when it does, it opens up my browser window. I have my border that goes around my canvas. This is what this is. And when I right-click and click inspect, right, I can look at my console and I can see that game started is triggering here, right? So it means like when the window loaded, it outputted game started, and it happens on line 2 on my JavaScript file. See, it says right there. So if I go back, you can see that on line 2, right? This is where I'm outputting game start, which means this totally worked, right? So my index.html file loaded up. It accessed my game.js file. My game.js file, kind of read that there's a function. Oh wait, there's a command on the root of my JavaScript file. What do you want me to do? Okay, access my start file when this is finished loading. Good. Now do the console log command. That's what it does. Okay. Okay. Is there a problem with this? No. However, we have a problem because all of this is in the global namespace right now, right? So my window on load, all this stuff here, my functions, they're all accessible from my global namespace, which means from a security perspective, if I want to do something like start, if I want to call the start function and press enter, it's going to say game started. I can access the stuff from the command line, which means if as a user, if I'm smart, I can cheat. I can change my any variable that's exposed right here. And I don't want to do that. I want to limit that from happening as a programmer, right? So I want to encapsulate or close, create a closure for my files. Again, new concepts. Here we go. And then I'll be done for this part. And I'll put it up on GitHub. So the closure looks like this. I'm going to create something called an IFI, right? It actually stands for an immediately invoked function expression. Now, don't be scared off by the name. Think about it as just something that I'm going to close up these files with for now, all right? But it's got a really weird syntax. It looks like this. Okay. Now, if you've seen this before, what this is anything that's inside these brackets is considered to be inside of a closure, right? So it's not in global namespace anymore. I'm going to take all this, I'm going to cut it, I'm going to go back up to this, I'm going to paste it. And then maybe I can actually format it, maybe. Let's see. It didn't work last time. Oh, there it is. All right, does it make sense? So what I've done is I've got these 3 functions, right? And this start method, but they're inside of this anonymous self-executing function right here. That's what this is, right? Now, when I say anonymous, it means that there's no name for it, right? Start, this function start has a name. It's a named function. This one is an unnamed function, an anonymous function. That's all it is, right? Okay, so what does this do? Well, if I go back to this, it still says game started. That's no problem. But if I try and use the start, command and press enter, it says, I don't know what you're talking about. There is no start because start is not exposed anymore. Okay, I've locked it in a box. I've put it in a closure, and there's a good reason for this. We lock up our file so we don't have any kind of spillover from one file to the other. If I declare a variable in one JavaScript file, it doesn't collide with a variable in another JavaScript file. I can call them the exact same name now, and it wouldn't matter, right? Because they're 2 different closures, 2 different scopes, if you will. Okay? Questions on that one?
Do you do that at the end, or do you do that?
I do it right now.
Right now?
Yeah. And the reason for this is because I want to make sure that everything is locked down, so it reduces my chances for errors and bugs, right? I know that if I can lock it down, that there's nothing going to be spilling over. I'm not using the global namespace anymore. I'm using the scope space that I can create my app, okay? Function space. Okay, cool. So that's really good. I've got this thing. I think it's a great place to put it up on GitHub. Notice that I have 71 changes that come up here on Visual Studio Code. Here's another way to put it up on GitHub with VS Code, right? VS Code has a GitHub integration built into it. If I click on this thing, it shows that these are all the changes and additions that I've had added in here. Notice that there's U for update, M for, I think for change, if I'm not wrong, right? And if I go to changes, the actual word changes, and click the plus, this is like doing git add dot, right? Notice now they're all A's, right? And now what I want to do, except for the M's, the changes. And then I can put a git message, right? I can say, set up CreateJS libraries. That's all I did, right? And then click this check mark. That's my commit. My commit is done, right? And now because I'm connected to my remote already, I did all that work, I can go here and do a push. Nice and easy. So VS Code, GitHub integration. That's a third way you can do things. So one way is command prompt or terminal. Second way is the GitHub tool that you can download, desktop.github.com. Third way is GitHub integration from your tool, whether it's VS Code, WebStorm, whatever you're using. Yeah.
When you did the push, now you're pushing to the master branch?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm always pushing to the master, right? If I want to make a secondary branch, I could totally do that. But for the most part, I'm going to ask you in the beginning to push to your master. Okay? All right, let's test that to see if that's true. Is it true? Did it go there? So I'm going to go back up there and refresh, and you can see now that I have 2 commits, right? And you can see that the first commit was initial commit, and this is the commit I just did. Okay, notice that they have different numbers to associate themselves. Okay? Cool. All right, back to this. Now, we still don't have any functionality, right? And we want to use our CreateJS libraries. So I'm going to kill that for now. That was just my test, right? My CreateJS libraries, if I want to know how to use them, the API documentation is right here, right? So if I click on docs, and if I go to EasoJS docs, and I want to click on stage, way down here. This is the document that I'm going to be following right here. So these are the things I got to kind of do, just like this, right? It gives you some code examples of what to do to set things up. Now I know them because I've been using CreateJS for years, right? So I can do this by hand. So the first thing you do is I need to make a reference to my canvas in my index.html. Notice I have a canvas right here. I want to connect to this. I want to make a reference to the canvas. Call it a hook. I want to hook into that canvas like we normally do with document.getElementById. Okay? So the way to do this is in the functional namespace, I want to use let. Why would I use let instead of var? Does anyone remember why or anyone know why? It's actually a new thing, right? Oh, you're learning new stuff today anyway. Might as well, right? Var declares a variable. But the problem with var is it declares it. I have to make a diagram. I'm sorry. So let's suppose that I have, really quickly, I'm sorry to do this, but I want to record this so you guys have this. Let's suppose that I have a structure. I'm just going to make another file here. So let's use the square. So here's my file. All right, let's see if that didn't work. Completely didn't work. Hey, let's try that again. Here's my file. Okay, now it's black. Here is my, I'm going to try this one more time. Here's my file. And it's really, slim. And inside my file, I declare a variable down here, right? Not at the top, but rather at the bottom. What happens to that variable? Does it stay there? Can I access it from up here? I've declared it down here. Can I access it from up here? Yeah, right? So what does JavaScript do? It does something called hoisting. It hoists this thing way up to the top, right? And this is bad because it can cause bugs. You think you declared it down here, but actually, because of hoisting, it exists anywhere in that space. That's bad. I want to have specific areas where my variables are declared. And the new way of doing that with ECMAScript 6 is let. Wherever you put it is where it's going to be declared. Okay, and that's why we use let. And I want you guys to use let from now on. Okay? So when I go back, I use let. And up here, I'm going to say my canvas, right? And I'm going to let my stage. So I'm declaring two variables, canvas and stage. Right now, they're empty. Okay? In my start method, or function, right? Which is called when the window loads. I'm going to do the following. I'm going to say canvas is equal to document getElementById. I can spell document. And it's going to point to canvas because I have an element on the index.html with an ID of canvas. That's what I'm pointing to, right? So that's what this is. So canvas now, it has a reference, hold a reference to that canvas, just like any other reference you make with JavaScript. Number two, this is where the CreateJS stuff comes in, so watch carefully. I need to define my stage. CreateJS has this analogy of stage, this idea of a stage. Everything happens on the stage. All the players happen on the stage, right? All the action happens on the stage. So my stage is a new, there's no code hinting here, so I have to remember CreateJS.stage, and I'm going to pass in a reference to my canvas. Okay, that's number one. Two, I also want to access CreateJS's ticker class, and I want to set the frame rate to 60. To 60. 600, yeah, it would never run. So what this is saying this, hey, I'm going to create a clock for the game, right? The game is going to tick 60 times every second. So every 16 milliseconds approximately, I'm going to, that's the next frame, and the next frame, and the next frame, okay? And then I want to create a event, a tick event. I'm using the on. That's a shortcut that's built into CreateJS that's equivalent to add event listener, right? I'm going to use the tick event to point to a callback function, which is going to be simply my update function. So what is it saying? It says, well, wait, look, every tick, call this function, right? Okay, that means this is my game loop, right? And this refreshes, or this is called every frame, right? And therefore, what I want to do every frame is I want to refresh the stage. I want to wipe away my canvas and redraw everything. And I can do that by putting in stage.update. Update is a stage, the stage objects method that redraws everything, okay? Now, where did I get all this stuff from? It comes back to this, right? My API documentation. That's what it does. So here's my stage. I'm passing in an empty, you can also do it this way, a canvas element ID, and so on. And what I want to do with the stage is I want to use add child to add elements to the stage. I want you to think about a stage as a, let's use the same canvas here, as a container. Here's my stage, let's say, and I want to draw something on it. So let's say I add another object to the stage. Now this is a child of the stage object. Okay, if this is my stage, right, or my canvas, where's the 0, 0 point? Top left corner, right? This is my 0, 0 point up here. So whenever I add it, by default, everything gets added right here, right next to this area right here. Okay, just keep that in mind when we do the next part. All right, so back to this. So I've got my stage, that's good, I've defined it, and now I want to call my main function. Notice what I've done. I set up an event listener, right? My frame rate, I set up my game loop. Right now it's updating the stage all the time, and now I'm going to do something in my main function. This is where everything happens, right here. So now what I want to do here is just to test this out to see that it works. This is where I want to do my console log, right? Where I'm going to say game started. If I save, as long as I'm still running my server, which I am, right? And if I go back to my browser, you can see still I've got game started. However, we know there's a change because guess what? It's being called on line 20. Line 20, looking down here, is right here inside the main function, which means everything works so far. Yes?
So you're running a local service to update the browser dynamically?
Yes, yes, yes. That's what I'm doing for. Because it's easier when I make a change, I can see the update instantly. So I don't have to go and refresh the browser, reset the browser, relaunch the browser. I don't do any of that stuff, right? It's a good way of, and if I had two screens and at home, I do have a 37-inch monitor, so I put one part of my browser on one side and I put my editor on the other side. So as I'm editing, I'm seeing the changes right away, right? Which is a really good way of working. All right, so this is cool, but I want to kind of do a hello world. And the way you can do a label or some kind of text object in CreateJS is to create some kind of variable. So we're going to create a thing called, we're going to call it a hello label. Here's my hello label, right? And inside of my main function, after the game is started, I'm going to say something like this. My hello label is equal to a new CreateJS.text object. That's another object you can do. So there's a couple classes I've talked about here. The stage object for CreateJS, the ticker object for CreateJS, the text object, there's bitmap objects, sprite objects, a bunch of other stuff that you can build. Notice this is very low level, so you can build from here any kind of game you want or any kind of object you want. If you want to build an ad, something interactive, you can do that here and without any kind of, it's just components. Now inside my text object, I don't have any code ending yet. I'm going to add that next week, right? It's another setup. I don't want to scare you guys away. That's why I'm doing it in parts, right? I'm going to put the string that I'm going to show, right, in my text, which is hello world, right? Traditional. And then 40 pixels, consolus as the font, size and the font family, that's what it is. And then the last argument has to be the color, which I'm going to make black. Okay, now, remember we talked about, does this complete everything that I need for my hello label? Is this added to the stage? No, I need to use add child. I need to connect it to the stage. The stage is a container, and every object I add to it, right? It's an object, a game object that's in the list, right? The display list. That's what it is. So here's an object that I want to add to the display list, and I'm going to do that by adding stage.addChild, and then specifying hello label. Where is this hello label going to appear? Top left corner. So save, go back, and if everything goes well, bam. Now, this is not text. This is rasterized text. These are pixels on my canvas, right? I cannot highlight this area. I can't do anything with this area. These are just pixels. So I've taken text, converted them into pixels, and spit them out inside that canvas. That's what I've done. But that gives us a lot of power, because now I can take that text and spin it around, change it, do whatever I want to do with it, because it's just pixels. And pixels, it's just data. When I have control over that, I can do whatever I want with it. Okay, let's make it spin around. I want to make that hello label spin around. How is it going to spin? Is it going to spin from the middle? Where is it going to spin from? Top left corner, because that's the anchor point for every game object in CreateJS and a lot of other frameworks. It spins from that anchor point. Okay, so let's try that. Now, if I'm going to make it spin, it's going to happen inside the game loop. Every frame, I want to change the angle. Let's show how that's done. So I want to specify hello label dot rotation, and if I make it equal to 5 by itself, it's only going to rotate it once, right? That's not really what I want. I want it to continuously spin, right? So what I really want to do is I want to say plus equals, which is kind of a shortcut to say something like hello label dot rotation is equal to hello label rotation plus 5, right? But really what it does is it'll do something like this, right? Very nice and simple. Okay, cool. But it's rotating on the corner, and I want to rotate it from the middle. So I want to change something called the registration point, the anchor point of my text from the top left corner to the middle, right? And the way to do that is in here in my hello label. I want to go in and say something like this. Hello label, this is an object now, right? Dot regex, registration point on the x-axis, right, is equal to, and I know this is really weird, but this is just part of the API, hello label dot get measured width times 0.5, and then hello label dot reg is equal to hello label dot get measured height. I have to type this and not make any mistakes, or else I'm in trouble. Now it does this, the middle, right? Because I've changed the registration point from the top left corner of that object to the middle of that object. Okay, and now if I want to make it so that it's in the middle of my screen, right? Then I can change the x and y coordinates of the label. Hello label dot x is equal to, so 640 divided by 2, 320, right? Hello label dot y is equal to 480 divided by 2 is 240, right? And now I can see that it's going to be in the middle of my screen. That went really fast there, but I think it's not complicated what I did, right? Yes.
When you make instantiate an object, is it also hoisted?
No, but well, because what I've done, I see what you're saying. So here, what I'm doing, right? See how I've created an object here, but I've made a reference to the object up here first. So it's in the functional space right now, right? Yeah. So this is where I made I created a reference here, and then I actually used the new keyword to create a new object down here using the text class. Okay. Anyone else have any questions around this? So cool. So you've got your first, yeah.
Does it always have to be like text and you could make color?
That's the color, right?
This is when I use this, I'm using the constructor notation to fill up my text object, to create my text object with some variables, right? However, this is the color, right?
Yeah.
So if I want to do it after, I want to change the color afterwards, I can simply do whatever the color is. I can change the color, or I can change the text, or I can change the font later on by itself. Or I cannot even use this thing, just leave it empty and do it after if I want to.
Yeah, but what I want to know is like to use the name of the color instead of the text.
No.
Okay.
No. Maybe. The answer is probably. Yeah, because anything that works probably in CSS would work here. Yes.
We add a child, right? Is that like the first layer? So we add it and say, oh, without the top of that?
Very good question. So here's the question is, if I add a child, is it on the first layer? And if I add another one, will it be on top of it? And the answer is yes. So the order that you add stuff is the order in layer. So for example, the first child, which is my hello label, if I added something else, like a goodbye label on top of it, it would literally appear on top. Let's try that. Just to add, so I'm going to copy all this text just because you asked. And then I'll go back to the other questions. And let's make it, instead of hello label, let's call this goodbye label. I don't have a goodbye label yet, but we'll make one, right? So we'll say, let goodbye label, right? And we'll just take this goodbye label so I don't have to type it over and over again. And I'm going to put it over here, just change the names. So all these are there. And instead of hello world, we're going to say goodbye world. Right?
Nice.
And instead of 40 pixels, we'll make it 20 pixels just to make it different. And instead of black, we'll make it red. Right? Okay, so FF in the first two, hexadecimal is RGB, red, green, blue. Same as normal and thing. That's what we do. We can also add other ways of doing that. If you only added two, it would accept those two. All right, so we got all this. Good, good, good. It's a little smaller, 20 pixels, which makes it small, and it's going to be on top of the exact same location as the other one. And let's make it spin the other way, just to make it different. So we're going to go over here, inside my update, and we'll say goodbye label dot rotation, right, minus equals to 5. Right, so spin the other way. If I go back, then I have this. Right? Okay.
So with CreateJS, there's like loads of shortcuts. Is there like a place to find all these?
The API documentation. So if I go back to my API documentation, right? But here's the problem with this, right? Man, do I have to go through all this by myself and try and figure it out? Well, if we had IntelliSense, right, it can give us a load of stuff we could do. And we're going to hit that next week because we're going to use TypeScript next week to give us the IntelliSense, the type hinting that we need, and add structure to my JavaScript for in the future. Yes.
I don't how to understand how the anonymous function or the immediately invoked function in work.
How does it work?
Yeah, like it's like that one or.
Yeah, we can. I mean, I can do that if you guys have time. Maybe we can. Can you see me after? Because I think that's more of an advanced question. Anyone else have any questions around this? So again, recap. CreateJS. It's a suite of libraries. All I've done is tap into them here, and I'm saying, hey, let's call upon the one library that I've used, or is Easel.js, and let's use a couple of classes from that library. I've used the stage class, I've used the ticker class, I've used the text class. Those are the 3 classes that I've used that already exist. I didn't write them, right? We're just using them. And all I'm doing here is all of these properties that are in here, and I think that's what you're asking. These properties or things that are in here, they're all kind of noted here in my API documentation, right? Now I'm going to try and give you all of the stuff that I know so that it gives you an idea of what you can create, right? And I think part of this is you playing around and discovering some of the stuff you can do and being creative. Because remember, you guys learned how to do this without CreateJS, yeah? So imagine now, I mean, it would take me probably twice as many lines of code to do what I've just done, right? Because of the way the canvas works when I create elements in the canvas and all that stuff, right? This is half the work for me. That means I can code twice as fast, theoretically. So we've learned, let me recap what we did in this video. We talked about CreateJS. We talked about Bower and how to use the package managers to grab the libraries and install them inside of my folder. right? And that's really it. Now I'm going to upload this to GitHub, and we've also talked a little bit more about GitHub. So here's the GitHub, and all I've done is modified my game.js. So I'm going to add this in, right? Here it is. I'm going to add a thing. So I'm going to say I'm going to added or updated game.js, right? You can make it more descriptive if you want, and then I'm going to push it to the master branch, and we're done. It's up on GitHub. So now I've got 3 commits on GitHub, right? If I go up and check, right? So if I refresh, you can see now that I have 3 commits, and all of my changes are here. You can actually go track them yourself. Any questions before we end for the day? Yes? No. Remember, I gave you 3 options, right? CreateJS, Phaser, if you want to, or Vanilla.js. Just no library whatsoever, right? It's totally up to you. It's up to you. I'm trying to make it easier for you, right? It is something new to learn, but it pays off in the end. All right, that's what I can tell you. Any other questions? Remember that your lab, if you haven't finished lab 2, please finish up lab 2 if you haven't had a chance to do it already. Put it up on Blackboard, right? And then we'll see you next week, okay? Thank you so much for your attendance and attention.
Oh yeah, there's a little thing.
So you're asking questions about the
Yeah.
why? Check your email. So because you're interested, what it does. Imagine if I have these functions. This is a function, this is a function, this is a function. These are all functions, right? Now, if I put them on the global scope, they're exposed. I want to close them up, right? And I want to use a function. Okay, but if I make a function like this and close them up, I got to make sure that this function is executable, right? In order for me to automatically execute this function, I need to use this syntax where the function executes itself. So think about this as a function, and I'm going to use brackets to self-execute. That's what it says.
So that's what the brackets are?
Yeah, yeah. So you do one of these. That's all it is. I'm saying put everything inside a function, self-execute. Self-executing anonymous function that does all this. So anything that's in this, so there's a line here, the window.onload, that starts the start function, it executes right away. But also encapsulates everything, so nothing's exposed on it.
How does that happen in the first place? Like,
Why is it exposed?
yes.
Because anything that I edit, if I have my index.html file, and if I have this other JavaScript file right here, and I attach it, what I'm actually doing is I'm injecting it right into the place where I attach it. So if I have a big file, and I attach it right here, that's exactly where it goes, right here. And that whole file gets injected and standard right in here. Right?
Instead, you have a function that evaluates at that line. And then that, okay. I see.
So that way I hide it.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes.
Questions? Who else? You have Node? Anyone else have any questions that I can answer? Yes?
For the uploading the folders to GitHub,
Yes.
how do we do that?
Okay. So what I just did, right, is you're just going to take your structure and upload it to GitHub. Now, if you don't have GitHub set up or locally, you can set up some similar structure that I've set up for you, right? Empty, right? With maybe some dummy files like a game.css, a game.js, an index.html that's empty, right? Put all that together, put it up on GitHub. Done, right? Make sense? What else? Anyone else have any questions? Are you guys good? Or you have a problem with Node? What's your problem with Node? Doesn't work? Oh, it doesn't work. You know why Node is a problem. The reason why it doesn't work in PowerShell is because PowerShell is not batch. It doesn't do batches. So if you want to try to
Okay, let's say.
You need, you use PowerShell, not this PowerShell, but Windows PowerShell. Try using that.
Let's say you would go apply-
Oh, there, right. So I type in PowerShell.
If you go
But I like our solution.
at least 6 or 7 of them,
Wow. There it is. Wait. I'll try it there. PowerShell should have access. No, you've installed it. Did you install it? Try typing node space minus V. Used to do it.
7 years old.
That's why it's taking so late.
Yeah.
You can't even use it. Windows 10 is a terrible thing.
Yeah, you said like 0 out of 3 power.
What?
Just gonna show 1 out of 3. And that means you have to take it.
I'm good. I'm good. What my time frame that you put in for 9 o'clock on the 24th is good. And if you put me in at 9 o'clock on the 25th, I'm good too. Oh yeah, I will. If you give me 10 minutes, I'll put that together and respond. Yeah, he responded saying he can't participate because he's writing his dissertation for his master's. So you can't do it. So it'll just be me. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Okay.
Yeah, you don't get that.
Yeah, I'm good. I'll let them have their breakfast and then I'll come in around the same time as the other one. Okay. And to me, I mean, A2017 would be great if it's available. Okay, I will. I'll check with Lisa and make sure that that's there. So I'll give her a call and then I'll update her. Okay? Thanks, Frederick. Okay. You guys all good? Yeah, so for this part, for the link, so you can link it up, but what you need to do is go, who's your engineer? So what you need to do is, does it work? Perfect. So what you want to do is just create a, see how I just highlighted my folder structure. So this is fine, right? Take the same folder structure and put it up together. And then from there, modify. Right? So what I'm trying to get you guys to do is understand why I'm putting assets and content and scripts in there, because I want you to break it out of the mother. No. Yeah, like this. Right. I kind of showed you that, right? So the way you would do that is, now this is not mine. This is yours. So first of all, put changes. Put plus. So it's going to say, let's say you get back dot. Wait. And then when it's still working. So you're going to get on the track. I don't know if you're going to maybe what you want to do is use it gets really good. It gets like unusable. This is not slow. This is just using Github. And now you can put something like, updated project, right? Something. Updated project. And then click the check mark. Well, super still working. That's what I'm trying to tell you. It's like you can probably do it faster if you use get me up and running. Oh, there it is. Fine. Okay, good. Now the ellipses. You connected to it already? And then click that should push everything. And then you should have eventually, not now. And then all right. I have it on the video too, but I'll leave it.
If you discuss.
Okay. So it looks like this. So you need Microsoft. We have it here. Yeah. Okay, you need power.
That you download through.
No, through Node. Right? You also need light dash server through Node. Right? Then you're going to need VS Code. If you don't have that already, right? You're probably going to need to get TypeScript. Huh? TypeScript. What else did I put in? Yeah, that was through Github. So if we use install, you say install all the CreateJS modules. You have to watch the video.
In the videos on YouTube.
I'm going to copy my slide. I know this is not crazy.
And is it just for like the first term? I mean, like the first week.
I got when you refresh on GitHub, what does it show?
So what do you think? Is it the same?
Something didn't work good.
So we need to like make that big.
Yeah. You didn't log in. Are you good?
Yeah, that's gonna be a next thing. That's not gonna be.
Are you guys?
We're just going to
Oh, we're walking out. What's that logic of music? I got that. Yeah, just literally what the video just.
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand.
Trust me, the stuff you're gonna learn, if there was anything. So you're gonna see stuff that.
I'm saying like, somehow that's CreateJS.
So now we can upload whatever we're calling it.
Exactly.
Yeah. There you go. Software manager. I want all of these. I gotta get everything set up on my laptop. So I can't start. Okay, so you uploaded yeah.
Yeah.
We can start the coding.
So I'm gonna send you over email. I'm gonna send you wires.
Are we good now?
Is that asking you to log in?
You would have to, right?
Oh wait, no, we already have.
Show you.
You know, in the store type terminal, 500, you know, and platforms will be, it's not so 500.
Dude, no, the platform will be a little bit smaller.
But that's not shown. Yeah.
But there's not gonna be.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
You don't have to control it. Just make it fine. And then like down there, the whole
I think
that's line up there. Obviously, all that, and then a like yeah, like
no, like we like what we did.
it's supposed to be fun. Like
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's like a-
We're still working on it.
Because if you're gonna have more than one, it's gonna make it hard just to just on the screen.
So we do that over the weekend. So we're really get the,
Yeah, it's like two bullets on screen. Yeah, people that shouldn't
Think about it.
More than that, what you need.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll do that tonight.
I think the design they were like, some bullets, lasers.
So here comes the actual designing part of it.
You can look at that. We have something weird and little. Yeah, whatever we can just send it.
It's like $5,000.
It's crazy one.
It doesn't matter how big it is, it's like we gotta work this weekend. As long as
Just the one way?
as long as it's continued.
There's no point where you guys set everything down at once. And then you wanna push something next month.
You start
But eventually, I was putting something, but then she said, you should have a, basically, you should have in virtual school, you should have a, they would be like a link. So they say, she actually she's giving you, I think you just have to make sure it's like that. The email for it, so much, so many books. The one I set up, it gives you a number. It's just math. It's like if you were calculating lines.
Pretty much you go on.
And you can make it.
We just need to. Yeah, they're not need to be. We're not using that, so just.
Yeah.
Just kind of wondering, like, what's the
Yeah, but now the area showing the box is not there. Maybe this is crazy.
all the points and racing areas, all the stuff like all the.
No, that's not.
It's not like the main.
Right now, this is very much. Yeah, but now we're
Do everything you can to get the rent server set up.
Do you guys have any?
Oh, it's a lot of.
I don't watch these. No, we make it together. Because we're getting the
I want to start,
These always start.
yeah.
Just have the background. Just get all the visuals in place and then do all the functionality.
It's like some of the
We'll decide later.
You do the or you can like.
Excel
JS code is really good for web.
Right?
Primarily use web and Node.js. I mean, if I was going to use
Just use web. And if you need something to go through exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
It's common. Right, so
Because like.
good.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I would use the idea for sure for Java. Sometimes I was going to use build Android application or video. So different things, different kinds. If I was going to make iOS application,
So how do you think of that driver?
I wouldn't use Android. C# applications in Visual Studio, like the big Visual Studio. You can use that Visual Studio code too, but for some things that are missing, not quite ready for it. Some stuff, there's tons of things out there, you know. Unreal? Yes, but you could specify your sort of later. And you would, or you're going to use
Basically.
I think I put the outline in Slack, but let me take a look. Phaser, CreateJS, touch for playing. No, I didn't put any. I'll put it up.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Same thing with the missing.
That's why we're having to do it changes. That's why we're having to do you have to wait for but if you have two shots, I feel like I'll be online that day. I can see it.
Where'd the other one go?
Design and everything. No,